feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. Download it. It is free. You can have that in your phone for easy access to our daily program between 12 and 2 p.m. You can always go back and pull up that app as well and watch or listen to our shows in its entirety. If you are watching to the right of the screen, that is me, JB. To the left, that is Darren Goldwater, and we're with you until 2 p.m. this afternoon across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. That is our text line, and you can get a hold of us there. We'll pop you right into the program. If you'd like to give us a shout, sure, be our guest. If you'd like to send us a text, do that, and we'll make sure we plug it in here. If you've got something to say, say it. We'll make sure that your comments are aired, and we'll try to fuss and discuss if it's pertaining to whatever we are discussing. Coming up this afternoon, it's a full boat again. Cory McCartney at 12:30. He'll update us on Braves spring training and spring training around Major League Baseball. We'll also talk a little bit of college football with Cory. That's just ahead, 25 minutes or so away. We've got David Cloninger at 1:05 with the Post and Courier. DC will preview the Texas-South Carolina series this weekend. We'll look back at last night's Citadel victory for the Gamecocks. We'll talk about the hoops matchup tonight against Ole Miss late, tipping off in Nashville. How about the women? Or will they be a one seed? All those answers coming your way in just a little while with DC. And then a perfect day for Scott Glaze. Scott, of course, the golf pro out at Stono Ferry in Hollywood, South Carolina. He is our golf analyst on Thursdays around here, and he's got a lot to analyze because the Players is well underway, and I'm going to update you on that here in just a few moments. We've got some hoops news to get to, and we're going to talk a lot about what happened in Charleston last night between the Citadel and South Carolina and so on and so forth. But first, let's make sure we bring in the engineer, the talent, the producer, and the handsome one.
Yeah. I'd be the captain now. I don't want to take the captain name. That wouldn't be right. But it's a good day. I've got multi-screens going on here. You can only see what you can see, but right behind the camera, I've got the Michigan State-Maryland game on, which will alternate back to the Players' Championship here very shortly. So I'm good to go. This is the start of like an outstanding couple of weeks. The end of the conference tournaments, the Players, the start of March Madness. This is just beautiful. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I am absolutely with you. This is last year we were, I don't want to say devastated because there was a pandemic that we didn't know anything about really, just kind of getting going. But we were devastated. As a matter of fact, you and I were very devastated because we were all set to launch our show and we couldn't do it.
Yep.
So we were missing out on all this stuff literally about this time last year.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think, right? I mean, this time last year, we won't go into too many specifics, but we had just given a handshake agreement about how this show was going to start, where it was going to start, how it was going to look and sound. And then us, like the entire sports world, shut down before we decided, let's just go ahead anyway. And you know what? It worked out. So I'm glad for us the way this all worked out. It's been good for us. And I think a lot of people have learned a lot of different things, some good, some bad, over these last 12 months that we'll take into the future now.
I want to give a quick plug to our friend Colin Taylor, by the way, who, of course, writes for GamecockCentral.com. He has an awesome article out today, literally looking back at the 2002 College World Series championship game and telling the stories of that team. He spoke to guys we know pretty well, like Drew Meyer and Landon Powell and Garris Gauntz, that great group of Gamecock baseball players. I would encourage folks, if you've got a membership to GamecockCentral.com, to go check that out while you're watching or listening to our program today. It is really some neat stuff. Let's go ahead and let's get a quick update, Darren, from the Players Championship. Again, more on this later with Scott Glaze, but Matthew Fitzpatrick continues to lead at TPC Sawgrass. He is 5 under today through 14 holes, and right behind him at 4 under par is Sergio Garcia. He is through 16, so he's about to wrap up his round. But there are some really interesting names at the top of the leaderboard today, and not names I don't want to say that you wouldn't expect, but they're veterans, we'll put it that way, of the game of golf, and all of a sudden they're near the top of this year's Players Championship. Lee Westwood at 3 under. How about that?
He played great last week. He had it right in his grasp last week to take that win, so he's been playing well.
Been playing really well. Stuart Sink through 12. He's at 2 under. You've got Gary Woodland at 1 under through 17. He's about to wrap his round here. So some veteran guys up there. You mentioned yesterday, keep an eye on Victor Hovland through 16. Victor Hovland is 1 under par. Webb Simpson also at 1 under par. Keegan Bradley, he is at 1 under. How about Phil Mickelson about to wrap his round? He's even par, so just 5 shots off the lead. This is the first time, I think, in 20 years or something that Phil Mickelson hasn't been ranked in the top 100 players in the world, and he's playing better this week.
Yeah, it's been a while. You know, this is one of those courses where it takes a little bit of experience. So some of the guys who people are high on, like a Colin Morikawa, not a lot of experience at this course, even though he's been playing great. This is one of those where you need to find your way around. You need to know what you're doing. I say that even though here's Fitzpatrick, who's jumped out to the lead. But Sergio's a good example of that. He's got an eagle on his card today. Phil is a good example of that. Can he hang around the leaderboard? Yeah, we'll see. But it's one of those courses in the early rounds on Thursday, typically, and again today, the weather was conducive for the guys in the early wave on Thursday to go out there and put up a number.
Not for this group. Clemson's Kyle Stanley, 11 over, and his round is done. He shot an 83 today, so a round to forget, certainly, for Kyle Stanley. And then a couple of other major names in golf who are playing not well, to put it quite politely. Ricky Fowler, Xander Schauffele, Rory McIlroy, Tony Finau, all 6 over par, all close to wrapping their rounds this afternoon. But at this point in time, none of them have a chance to be in contention for this thing if it continues to go that way. I don't want to say that I'm shocked by really any of those guys. I haven't been keeping up with how they're playing outside of Rory. I thought Rory would. I'm not going to say I thought he was going to win this. He's obviously the defending champ from 2019. They didn't play the tournament last year, but I certainly thought that he would play well in this tournament. He's done anything but that. He's at 6 over, Darren, and he is about to get up on 18 here just a little bit and wrap up his first round. It's been terrible for Rory. I'm anxious to hear what Scott Glaze has to say about that.
Yeah, it hasn't been good for Rory. I mean, the last couple of weeks, he's been flirting with leaderboards, but then falling off as the weekend has worked its way through. He put an 8 on his card on his 9th hole today. It has not been Rory's day at all. No. You can't win it. I mean, the cliche is there, and it's true. You can't win a tournament on Thursday. You can lose it, and Rory is doing well at that.
Yeah, there's no question. 843-321-8893 is our phone number and our text line. Before we get to baseball, let me update the scores quickly. In the SEC yesterday, the first round game, Vanderbilt, essentially at home in Nashville, took care of Texas A&M. So they're on to this afternoon's ball game against 5th-seeded Florida. That should tip somewhere around 2:30 our time. The full slate for the SEC today starts It has just started, as a matter of fact, between 9th seeded Mississippi State and 8th seeded Kentucky. The Wildcats are, of course, going to have to win the SEC tournament to make it into the dance. So we'll see if they can get off to a good start today against the Bulldogs. Then, as I mentioned, Vandy in Florida, Georgia and Missouri in the first night game, and then late tip right around 9:30 or so from Bridgestone Arena. That is 11th seeded South Carolina and 6th seeded Ole Miss. And so that is what the SEC looks like today. Here's what the ACC looks like, and it looks a little different than if you haven't heard the news, and maybe you're looking at the screen if you're watching our show, you've probably figured it out by now. Duke is done with the tournament and more than likely with the season, because they were probably going to have to win this whole thing, maybe squeak in there if they lost the championship game, but probably not. They have a COVID positive on the roster, so they will not play Florida State today. FSU will advance automatically. So here is the rest of the slate. Virginia and Syracuse, they have just tipped off a little bit ago. Early lead for Syracuse 9-7 over top-seeded Virginia with 15 minutes to go in the first half. That game right now is on ESPN2. Following, it's Georgia Tech and Miami. The Hurricanes upset Clemson yesterday. Clemson, of course, had beaten them twice in the regular season, but the Hurricanes took care of business in a tight one, knocking the Tigers out. Clemson still considered in the dance, but Miami, of course, they're going to have to win the ACC championship to get in there. We already mentioned Florida State moving on because Duke has had to forfeit the rest of this tournament because of COVID. And third seed of Virginia Tech and North Carolina will tip late tonight at 9 o'clock, and that is your entire Thursday slate for the ACC. In the Big 12 right now, they're on the floor. Oklahoma State and West Virginia early lead for the Cowboys, 28-25, with a little under 4 minutes to go in the first half of that one. So we'll keep you updated on what's going on, certainly in basketball throughout the afternoon, and try to get you some scores. As a matter of fact, before I move on here, let me pull some great radio here and give you a quick score update in the SEC. About 15 minutes to go in the first half. Kentucky and Mississippi State all tied at 5 apiece. So if you are listening or watching our program, you're out on the move, we're going to keep you updated with the scores throughout the day. All right, so last night in baseball, South Carolina, Darren, took care of business against the Citadel Bulldogs, a final score of 11-7. I tweeted early on in that matchup that Tony Skoll, basically with what hair he's got left, probably wanted to pull it out. His guys really flubbed it up early on and gave Carolina an early lead. And the Citadel, of course, clawed back, scratched back. They took the lead, and then that's when some things changed. And South Carolina put a bunch of runs on the board late and were able to move to 11-0. Of course, they're going to go to Texas this weekend trying to maintain that perfect record. First of all, anybody that watched the game, I was texting with somebody who was at the game last night and said, man, this thing is hard to watch. It's just been sloppy errors. Nobody's swinging it really well. Midweek game, we knew what both teams were doing coming into it. They were throwing a lot of arms. They were planning on throwing a lot of arms. These midweek games are so interesting because they're so important. Like if you're a bubble team in the SEC or the ACC in particular, leagues like that, which means you probably went 14-16, 15-15, 16-14, somewhere in there in league play, right? Generally, that's really good. That's good enough to get you in the postseason. Even 13-17 sometimes is good enough to get you into the tournament. But it is if you won your midweek games. And maybe you had a couple of big non-conference wins here and there. And, of course, South Carolina's got a couple of those already against Clemson, and they haven't lost outside of that. So it's interesting in the fact that the games are very important, but all these teams also use these games as time to get guys work, get different guys in there, position guys, moving them around, getting some ABs and stuff like that. So they can get out of whack in a hurry. And that's kind of what it was last night, but Carolina was able to bounce back. Now let's talk about what everybody's talking about, right? Let's just get down to it here. So the Citadel throws two arms out there who were able. Carolina's got a potent lineup. We all know that. Simon Graff was the first one, is the guy that everybody's really talking about today, the left-hander who was able to end an inning on a weak ground ball by Andrew Eister, Darren. and Eister thrown out. Graff fielded it, threw him out, and as he's walking off the field, essentially taunting the Gamecocks dugout, and it wasn't just a phrase or two. It was pretty emotional as he crossed the foul line and headed towards his own dugout, pumping his fist multiple times. You can see the video on the screen there. I'm an emotional guy anyways in sports, but I was also when I played, I was very quiet and humble about what I did. Unless somebody had something to say to me, I didn't really have much to say because, especially in baseball, you get humbled in this sport very quick, and you got to learn how to control yourself and check yourself, especially when you're playing teams much better than you. I saw last night Randy Carlson tweeted out, I don't understand why fans get so upset at pitchers for showing emotion, because half the time fans don't hear what's coming out of the dugout from the other teams, and coaches don't do anything to stop that. And he's not wrong. He's actually right about that. There's a lot of crap that comes out of dugouts that I wish kids would knock it off. In saying that, I don't like what he did, and Carolina didn't either. and when they ran their closer in there, and he comes in all hot and bothered, and that's his shtick. He runs out to the mound, he gets all fired up, and he's ready to go. I don't know that he knew what he was about to run into, and I'm not trying to be arrogant about this, but South Carolina was ready and waiting for what was coming next from either one of those guys or whomever else it was going to be. They stirred up a hornet's nest, and they paid for it.
I'm not going to sit here and fault Graff, right? I mean, he's a second-year freshman. He played a little last year and has that year eligibility. So I understand the emotions. You know, it's an undefeated team, ranked, I guess, as high as number 5 in the country. We go by D1 baseball and 12. That's really irrelevant. So you come in as a freshman, you're in a tight spot, you get them out, and you've got emotion. I understand where he's coming from. I think if you ask Graff 2 years down the road, maybe even today, but if you ask him down the road when he has a little bit more maturity and experience, he'd probably say that wasn't the right time and the right place to do that, because my reaction was immediate. I was watching at that point and I said, because that is another team that, you know, little things like that can wake a team with a lineup that Tony Skoll said yesterday about as physical and offensive lineup the Gamecocks have as anybody in the country. So last night during the game, I'm talking to Link Saunders. And if anybody remembers Link, he's one of the best closers in Citadel history. And I thought
maybe the best.
He's certainly one of them. He's up on that list. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he closed out a game in 2007 when Carolina was the number 1 team in the country. I remember calling the game well, and Link is very well known for being very emotional on the mound. I mean, he stalks around on that mound, and he will show you up every now and then. But he also waited until the last out of the 9th to do it. And that's the difference, right? You had the veteran there who finished things off and then had the explosion of emotion, whereas you had the freshman who finished things off in the 7th or 8th and kind of let it out a little early.
Exactly. You know, we've seen celebrations more often in baseball than we used to see. In the big leagues, guys are pimping home runs a little bit more. They're a little bit more fired up and emotional than they used to be, kind of flipping bats and taking their time around the bases and stuff like that. You know, everybody's going to be their own guy. You know, I know a guy that really well that plays in the big leagues, and he's hit a lot of home runs, and that's not him. He's just not that guy. He's an old school guy, and he trots around the bases, and he knows what he just did. He doesn't have to show you all or tell you all, because you all saw the ball leave the yard, right? And we've seen it. I mean, you could go back to guys like John Rocker, right? I mean, we could go back years. There's a lot of guys in the big leagues who, when they would do some of that stuff, they promote some of those antics of their own, show off a little bit. That was the exception, not the rule. And in college baseball today, I think some of this is becoming more the rule than the exception, if that makes sense. Not always, but there are kids who maybe that's what they think is cool. Maybe that's the only way they know how to show emotion. I'm not personally one of those guys. I thought what that young man did last night, I probably would have pulled him over in the dugout and had a quick word with him. Keep in mind who his pitching coach is and who his head coach is. I've known Tony Skoll for over 30 years. As humble as a human as there is out there, a fiery baseball player. He could play. One of the best players to ever put that uniform on at the Citadel, and he wears it as proud as anybody's ever worn it. But he also understands the situation. And then his pitching coach is Blake Cooper, who pitched at South Carolina. Blake Cooper was a superstar in Omaha, and you didn't even see him pump a fist when he was on the mound. He just walked on and walked off the mound. But that's Blake. He's just kind of a go-with-the-flow type guy. So I feel certain that that was a teaching moment for them to be able to teach this young man, hey, look, you're going to be a good player. You're a pretty good player now, but you need to learn something here. Don't stir up the hornet's nest. If you've got a job to do, go out there and do that. Don't give anybody any reason more to try to pound it right back down your throat. I thought it was, to be blunt about it, I thought it was ridiculous. And I would have told him that too. And I certainly think it got Carolina fired up. And then they brought in their closer, 90-91, right down the pipe for South Carolina. That's BP. That's what they were waiting to see. They saw it, they hit it, and Carolina won the game.
Yeah, again, I won't fault a young kid for going out, and I mean it's South Carolina, right? I mean, as Tony Skoll said yesterday, a lot of these Citadel players, a lot of guys who are not playing in the SEC weren't recruited by the big time programs, even though they felt like they're good enough to play there. So you have this opportunity on a big stage. You've got a decent crowd there. You've got a little buzz. You've got a lead. You slam the door shut with the lead. So I understand the emotion, but I think as he, I think as he matures, he would understand that maybe that wasn't the time and the place.
I go back to the way Lou Holtz used to teach it. Celebrate with your teammates, not with the crowd.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the crowd. That was the other team. And in my opinion, again, that's even worse. But, in football today, that saying is long gone out the window. We all know what happens in football. You score, you do something big, you're flexing to the crowd, you're having some fun out there. That's it. That's what it is in football now. In baseball, I'm a celebrate with your team type guy. You want to pump your chest and be fired up walking off the mound because you succeeded and did something well for your squad. I don't have a problem with that. You want to go in there and throw a bucket across the dugout, whatever you want to do, man. I don't care. But it's when you turn around and make it visible that you've got something to say out there to somebody else because you got an out with a 1-run lead in the 7th inning against the 5th ranked team in the country. Careful what you wish for and what you ask for.
It was, I think it was Skyler. When Skyler Meade was on with us, we were talking about the rivalry. And what he pointed out, it's the Clemson-Carolina rivalry is what I'm talking about. It's not built on, in baseball, hate necessarily. It's built on a lot of mutual respect. These guys know each other. They've played with each other for really a lot of times their whole lives. But when they get against each other, Clemson, Carolina, there is a lot of emotion. There is a lot of chirping and barking, but it's in their own dugout. It's celebrating with your team and with your teammates. It's not going cross dugouts. And that's where the emotion and that's where the chatter is really coming from in a heated rivalry. So you compare that to, showing up the opposite dugout and it's a pretty stark contrast.
Keep in mind as well with this series specifically, they still have to play twice more this year, and both of those games are in Founders Park.
Yeah.
We'll
see. I mean, look, the Citadel always plays Carolina tough. So it wouldn't even shock me if the Citadel beats them one of those two either.
No, I mean, it wouldn't shock me either. But I'm just saying, you gotta know what's coming, and you gotta be careful about how you show your emotion out there. But emotionally for South Carolina, they're 11-0, and it's the first time in 7 seasons, I believe I have that correct, 7 or 8 seasons that they've been at least 11-0. I think it was 2014. I want to say they started the year 16-0, and they were up close to, if not number 1, in most polls. And of course, that year, I can't remember if they went to Super Regional or not that year. I believe that they were pretty close to it. Maybe a regional appearance. But anyways, Carolina's going to head to Texas this weekend. We're going to talk about that game with David Cloninger coming up in just a little while, or that series, excuse me. And this will be the first time that they have seen the Longhorns since the 2002 National Championship game, in which Texas won 12-6. These games, of course, Derek Scott's going to have them on the broadcast. And if you download the South Carolina Gamecocks app, you'll be able to listen to all of those. but you can also watch the games on the Longhorn Network. I know if you are a Dish Network subscriber, I think it's of the 120 package or higher, you get the Longhorn Network. With DirecTV, I think you have to be either the highest package or maybe the second highest package. I don't know that Comcast has the Longhorn Network, and I'm not sure about some of those other ones, so you might want to check and make sure. I do know that the Longhorn Network is available through the ESPN Plus app, but you might have to pay extra for that if you intend to watch those 3 games through the app because your television carrier isn't carrying it.
Well, you can't get it. So if your television carrier doesn't have it, even if you have the ESPN app, because if you're watching on the ESPN app, you sign in with your TV provider. So if your TV provider doesn't carry it, you can't get it on the ESPN app. The Longhorn Network is one of those that has never really been able to breach into the mainstream. So it's on DirecTV, it's on Dish, but it's on their upper echelon tiers. Outside of that, you better be in Texas. So it may be tough to watch. But if you've got Dish, if you got DirecTV, maybe you can up your package for the weekend. It's always possible. It's always fun to make those calls and see what you can get out of those guys.
Perfect. Looking forward to that one, certainly. And we will, again, talk more about that with David Cloninger coming up here in just a little bit. If you missed the news is that Duke is out of the ACC tournament because of a positive COVID test. So Florida State will automatically advance. And it looks like Duke's season, Darren, is more than likely over now with that COVID test because they were probably going to have to win the ACC tournament. But scores going on right now with about 10 minutes to go in the first half. Mississippi State up 15-11 on Kentucky. Another blue blood that's going to have to win their tournament to get into March Madness. Right now, it is not going their way. 17-11 now is the updated score in that one. And other games across the country. The quarterfinal in the MAC championship, Toledo leads 54-50 over Ball State. West Virginia 36-30 on Oklahoma State at halftime. In the quarterfinal of the Big 12 championship, Maryland is defeating Michigan State right now by 1 with less than a minute to go in the first half. Second round of the Big 10 tournament. Villanova up on Georgetown in the first half of that one, about 11 minutes to go. Syracuse with a 6-point lead on top-seeded Virginia. 8 minutes left in the first half of that one. And Temple and South Florida, that one on ESPNU, 7:45 to go in the first half. Temple leads 25-16 in the first round of the American Athletic Conference Championship. So we'll keep you updated on those scores as the day moves along. And again, Matthew Fitzpatrick continues to lead the Players' Championship at 5 under, but quick update, he has now been matched by Sergio Garcia, who has birdied 17 and is on 18, tied at 5 under with Fitzpatrick.
Yep, the Michigan State-Maryland game, Michigan State was up big. They were up 8 or 9 in the first few minutes of the game. Maryland has closed this half strong. I saw a lot of chatter. I'm not going to say I'm immune to this either. It felt like a sucker line. The Michigan State-Maryland line in places was Michigan State +1, +1.5. Others had it at Michigan State favored by a point. It felt a little bit like a sucker line with Michigan State having played as well as they have, just beating Michigan to enter into this Big Ten tournament. And now they're on the ropes a little bit, heading down towards the half.
We'll keep our eyes on that throughout the afternoon. Scott Glaze on golf at 1:30. David Cloninger on the Gamecocks. Victory over the Bulldogs, their trip to Texas, and tonight's Ole Miss Carolina matchup on the hardwood. That's at 1:05. But coming up next, we head to Atlanta, Georgia. Cory McCartney, he'll give us an update on spring training. We're also going to talk about Kansas with him. Jeff Long fired yesterday by the Jayhawks athletics department. So now they don't have an AD and they don't have a head football coach in March. What is next for Kansas football? And we'll get a national take on this and see what Cory has to say certainly on that. Hang tight. It is Thursday on the JB and Goldwater Show, and we'll be right back.
Peace and love at Stokes Speed Dub.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. Whatever you got planned this week, cancel it. 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours at whatever price it takes. I repeat, 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours. To the first 72 car buyers interested in saving up to $6,000 on a new Volkswagen for 3 days only. Every new Volkswagen and pre-owned vehicle at our bottom line price. direct to the public, regardless of profit. Qualified purchases with interest-free financing for 60 months, and all trade-ins will be accepted. Interested parties should arrive early for best selection. You will not find a lower price anywhere in the country. 72-hour Volkswagen clearance, savings up to $6,000, 3 days only at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Dub.
$16.66 per month per thousand borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag includes $499.50 administration fee subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Guys, spring is finally in the air. You know what that means? Basketball in its home stretch. March Madness promotion at Dog and Ducks 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road. From now until the end of the tournament, $5 Sweetwater pints. That's right. Every Sweetwater, just $5 at Dog and Duck, Park West, Bell Hall, and their Clemens Ferry location. Plus, baseball spring training, college baseball, spring football, it's all available at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
I've been from Tucson to Courier to Hatchapeta, apart.
12:32 Thursday afternoon, March the 11th. Welcome back to JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. It is Thursday. That means buy one, get one half off foot-long cheesesteaks at DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. If you're in the Low Country area, make sure you run by or head to the website, dbscheesesteaks.com, for their entire menu. DB's Cheesesteaks voted number 1, Charleston's Choice number 1 for the best cheesesteak in town. Again, dbscheesesteaks.com, and they're on every available delivery app as well, and they'll drop it off at your doorstep. DB's Cheesesteak. Try the buffalo chicken cheesesteak, and don't forget the boardwalk fries. Buy one, get one half off today at DB's. All right, Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford here till 2 o'clock. Again, David Cloninger at 1, Scott Glaze at 1:30, and we're waiting on Cory McCartney temporarily, right?
Let me turn my mic back on here. Yeah, he'll pop in here. He should pop in about a minute or two. We'll have Cory. The Braves, I can tell you, the lineup they ran out there today, probably very, very possibly a sneak peek at their opening day lineup as well. So there's plenty to get to on the Braves side, baseball side, and like you said, Kansas and Jeff Long, which if you heard my comments yesterday, I'm not surprised that Jeff Long is out. And I'll double down on what I said yesterday. It probably took too long to get Jeff Long out because this whole thing's been a debacle.
Yeah, that was something certainly that I don't know. Like guys like you were, I don't want to say anticipating or expecting that, but that wasn't something that would shock you in any way, shape, or form. Didn't shock me either.
Yeah,
I guess I should lump myself into that. But yeah, it was. This is one of those. Obviously, they're firing Jeff Long here. I mean, did they give an official reason? First of all,
I didn't see an official reason, but right. I mean, look, he hired a guy without doing a background check, and whether or not he knew the specifics of the 2013 report, he either A, knew them and lied, or B, didn't know them and didn't do his own background check well enough, and then fired him, Les Miles, and paid him out without needing to. Could have just fired him and let him go without paying him, which is what probably should have been done.
Yeah, well, and that was my point. Without really something official as to why they relieved him of his duties, it was more like a failure to do your duties type situation for Jeff Long. We'll get to more of that here in just a moment, but we welcome Cory McCartney in from Atlanta, Georgia. What's up, man?
How's it going, guys?
Oh, well, we're like you this week. We've got our own little separate studio thing going on.
Nice. Are you guys quarantining, or we just need some distance?
we're testing some stuff out. We've got an opportunity to kind of grow stuff, and everyone's going remote these days, right? So
That's right.
The one really, I don't know, negative feedback of the way I had some stuff set up. I had some production folks say we need closer shots of you and Jamie. So I said, okay, so we've got multiple ways to go about this, but it's been fun so far.
All right.
Why
like
would
it.
Why would anybody want closer shots of us?
I don't know.
Idea.
It's not because we look.
All right, Cory, let's get an update from Braves spring training. Aaron mentioned just a moment ago that the lineup put on the field today by the Braves could be maybe a sneak peek at the future of their opening day lineup. Can you tell us what that looks like?
Yeah, sorry, hang on 1 second. I had a call coming in. People, try to tell people that you're doing radio shows, and they still, they're still not always. They don't always care. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to have Ronald Acuna Jr. at the top of the lineup. That's what it looks like for today's game. You got Albee second, Freeman third, Ozuna, d'Arnaud, Swanson, Riley, Pache, Jake Lamb, and Kyle Wright on the mound today. So yeah, I mean, I think this is, we talked about this last week with the DH being out of the picture for the NL in 21. You're going to have that, the need to have Freddie Freeman at 3 again in this lineup. I went into a little bit last week from a statistical standpoint. There's a lot of reasons to have him at 2, but the expectation is he's at 3. And of course, you got Ozuna 4. Dansby Swanson making his way out that lineup there, coming at 6. But Pache, that's the big thing. Christian Pache broke out number 25 yesterday. He'd worn that in the minors, wore 14 so far in the majors, but wanted to wear 25 for his idol, of course, Andrew Jones. So we'll see that back in circulation, potentially in center field on opening day in Atlanta.
Now, I know Max Fried was it, I don't know, maybe a week ago, a little less than a week ago, he was scratched because of potential exposure to COVID. Is everything good there?
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously on the mound yesterday. Looked like Max Fried. The curveball was great. The velocity was, gets up around 97 when he needs to. So I thought he was really effective in his first outing in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't see his stat line from yesterday. I knew that he was on the bump, but all these guys, I mean, it's early. I mean, we're about close to the halfway point of March. Darren, do you have a concert going on over there?
I just realized what it was. I had a scoreboard up in the background, and something's popping in. It's gone now.
Okay, we're about halfway through March. How do you think they feel, or as you've poked around with their potential staff for top 4 or 5 guys? Do they feel pretty good about them so far? Where do they stand?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I mean, Drew Smiley, had a kind of a rough outing last time out. Obviously, you're waiting to still see what happens with Mike Soroka. He's thrown live BP 3 times. I think he's making every effort to be ready by opening day. I'm still a little skeptical that's going to happen. I think he's still going to be held back a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think by and large, Charlie Morton's looked strong. Obviously Fried yesterday having a nice outing in his first efficient outing in his first time back. This spring is key. I think he's lining up to potentially be your opening day starter. So I think, Smiley is a bit of a question mark for me, but then you kind of figure out, how's this thing going to sort out after those guys? Obviously, Ian Anderson, there's some question as to how many pitchers you're really going to need in a rotation in 2021. Brian Snicker has said, without officially saying so, he feels like they're really going to kind of have a 6-man rotation anyway. I know the Reds have kind of actually gone on the book and said that's what we're doing. But, after a lack of innings in 20, you're going to see them needing more pitchers in 21. So, basically a 6-man. So then is it Kyle Wright? Is it Bryce Wilson? Is it Huascar Ynoa, who's shown some glimpses of what he can do at times? So I would give the edge to Wright, but Wilson, you got to remember, looks so good in the NLCS against the Dodgers. So there is still some things to be decided, certainly pitching wise, as spring rolls on.
All right, let's talk about this 6-man ordeal real quick. A 6-man rotation. How would the other 5 guys feel about that? I mean, don't they have bonus structures in their contract with innings pitched, number of starts, number of wins, and things of that nature? If you add a 6th man into a rotation, I mean, I know that guys have always kind of been ready to throw every 5th day, so that throws them off one day as far as their prep work goes, and then you got contract stuff to worry about. Is that? Am I thinking too much into this? Is that a big deal?
I don't think you're thinking too much into it. And, I think that's why, from the Braves standpoint, you don't officially come out and say, we're going to a 6-man rotation. If a guy struggles one outing, then maybe you give him a little bit of time to between that and his next start, give him an extra day. If guy goes out there and throws 6 easy innings, you may not need to give him that extra day rest. So I think they're approaching it as being kind of circumstantial, as opposed to a team like the Reds obviously have said that they're going with a 6-man. So I think it kind of frees you from guy getting upset. Obviously we've seen that. Jay Happ had this happen, where he wasn't going to get his vesting starts in. So I think you want to avoid that as much as possible. And I think you do that by not clearly saying we're doing it and just making it more of a circumstantial thing.
Cory McCartney, Atlanta, Georgia. A 6-man rotation. I'd rather them go to a 4-man rotation, to be honest with you. I just, all right, whatever. How about some of these non-roster invitees that have been in spring training? I know you've been keeping up with Kazmar. Love what he's doing. I guess he's still swinging the stick pretty well, but any news and notes to pass along from any of those guys? Maybe somebody that we're looking at early on that, hey, maybe they got a chance to make the opening day roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you look at the bullpen, certainly Carl Edwards Jr., Victor Arano are a couple of guys that, come to mind. Edwards hasn't looked all that sharp, but you got to remember this is a bullpen that lost, Mark Melancon, Shane Green, Darren O'Day, and, they're really needing Will Smith, to rebound after a bad last year and be that closer again. You're needing to know that AJ Minter and Tyler Matzek, Tyler Matzek was obviously a first-round draft pick for the Rockies, years ago, but was gone from the majors for years to show that they can consistently, perform at a major league level. That's something Minter's shown it in glimpses, but we haven't seen it, consistently out of him. So I think, looking at those guys, Edwards in particular, in the bullpen are options. And then, I think Phillip Ervin is a really interesting name in the outfield. Now, one of the problems with this team's makeup is if you've got Christian Pache in center field, you've got an $8 million man in Ender Inciarte that you're going to have to keep on the bench somehow. Obviously, you're going to have a backup catcher, which is probably going to be Alex Jackson. You've got Johan Camargo, who brings you a lot of versatility. And then you've got Pablo Sandoval and Jason Kipnis, guys like that going for those infield spots. You don't have a lot of options. I missed Jake Lamb. He's going to be very much one of these guys too. So there may not be a lot of bench opportunities, but Phillip Ervin has been playing really well for this team. If not for him, you're looking at the Pirates maybe having their highlight of the entire year. He broke up a no-hitter a couple days ago against them in the 9th inning. So he's looked good. He's played left field. He's played right field. He's been in the DH spot. But when you're only able to bring being an outfielder to the table, and you've got another guy in Inciarte that's due $8 million, as long as he's on this roster, it's hard to find a spot for Ervin. And he's a guy who's out of options this year. They got him, via the Cubs after they put him on waivers. But he's certainly been an interesting name to watch in camp so far.
Freddie Freeman, in the conversations that folks have had with him, is there a sense of pressure on his shoulders at all? I mean, obviously he was the MVP last year. Does Freddie Freeman look at 2021 as hey, this is kind of who I am now, or does he even think about it? What is his mentality like as basically the leader of this team?
Yeah, I think he's just become, kind of I don't want to say happy-go-lucky, but I think he's a guy who's very comfortable in where he's at in his career and, all the stuff that he's gone through from a personal level these past few years. I think he's very comfortable being Freddie Freeman. And, I think there's certain things certain benchmarks, certain accomplishments that you look for, as he moves on in his career. I know batting average isn't something that we hold in the same regard anymore, but the Braves haven't won a batting title since 2008 with Chipper Jones, and Freeman has come close. He was runner-up last year to Juan Soto. He's been third twice. I think it's things like that. I think Freeman's to the point where he's reached the pinnacle. He's been an MVP. He's been consistently among the best first basemen in the game. And then now I think we're starting to tweak that resume a little bit so he can kind of establish himself as one of the all-time kind of Braves. So I think for him, it's obviously about a World Series, but I think outside that, it's continuing to show that he's one of the best hitters in baseball.
Cory, let's get to Darren's favorite topic of the week, the Mets practice World Series celebration. What'd you think of that?
If you don't practice it, how are you going to know how you're going to react? Practice like you act like you've been there before, right? And how do you act like you've been there unless you practice like you've been there?
Oh, come on. All right, we're all baseball guys. Let's put odds right now on the Mets winning the World Series after practicing a dugout clearing celebration for a World Series halfway through spring training.
If you were an announcer, you would never utter the words no hitter.
Oh, no. I do. I absolutely
Okay.
Because that's an ongoing thing. As an announcer, it's your job to say what's happening. So I don't right. that's not an ongoing that's not a thing. But if you're practicing winning the World Series and running out of the dugout and celebrating on the mound, I mean, come on.
I don't know what to say. To me, you got, if you're going to have some fun in spring and be, just don't, I'm sure if they could go back and not have somebody filming it, they would probably feel a lot better about the situation. But it makes you think about all the movies when there's some silly play that they pull out of nowhere that they're going to pull out at the end of the game. If you don't practice it, it's never going to work right.
Okay, that's a play. That's like the hidden ball trick.
This is a play, right?
Well, we'll just let the Nationals and Mets fans argue over this. The Braves will just look over their shoulder as they complain about this all season. How about that? Because Cory, if they win, this will be 4 divisions in a row for Brian Snitker, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I wrote about this today. I mean, I only brought this up because I get a lot of sports books, will send you their latest odds and whatnot. And Brian Snitker is actually Vegas's favorite to be National League Manager of the Year. And remember, he won it a couple years ago. And, this is something that Bobby Cox won 3 times. And before that, they had only been giving out the Baseball Writers Association version of it since 82. The Sporting News one, they've actually been giving out since the 30s. And, outside of Cox and Snitker has won it twice now with the Sporting News version, only one other Braves manager has ever won that award. Now you're talking about Snit having won 3 consecutive division titles. He's got this, contract extension in hand. And when you start playing things out of a contract that could keep him there through 2024, this guy could end up being 3rd on the Braves all-time wins list by the time that deal's done. And don't remember, it wasn't that long ago where he got that job as an interim. And you thought at the time they're just giving this guy a nod after decades in the organization and just letting him run that interim tag out. Not to go on a soapbox here, but it is really incredible to think what Brian Snitker has accomplished in that role, and being the leader of this team, having won 3 straight division titles.
What do some of the players say about him? Just conversations you've had, or folks in the media have had, maybe off camera, not necessarily off the record, but just off camera. What do the guys say about him? What's he like in the dugout, in the clubhouse, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, they love him. It's always funny when you talk to Freddie Freeman about him, because Freddie calls him Brian. Most people call him Snit or Snicker. Freddie always calls him Brian, which I always think is kind of funny. But they love him. I mean, this was a story that had made its way out years ago. But there was when John Hart was still there, in control, and John Coppola. There was some losses that in. John Hart had, come in and kind of shown some bluster and chewed out Snit. And, Nick Markakis let it be known that he was sticking up for his manager. And if it had to come to blows, he'd be the guy to do it. So they're very much in his corner. But he believes in his guys. And I think he's so much of that vein of Bobby Cox being that player's manager. And we talked to him a lot about, like, how do you work in analytics and what do you pay attention to? And he's been, willing to adapt and wanting to adapt to that stuff. But, when it comes down to it, he's just a genuine guy that the guys love playing for. He's been part of this organization for 40 years. He bleeds Braves. And I think because of that, these guys know that he's there for them, and he's there for what's best for the organization.
Doesn't that spur a very interesting conversation with managers today? You have, I would call Brian Snitker old school. I mean, like you mentioned, he's come around to some of what is in the game, the analytics and how different things are played and stuff like that now. But then you have, the Aaron Boones and the Gabe Kaplers of the world, and these guys who are analytical, and they look at I don't know what they're looking at. I don't even know what some of these charts are called anymore, and some of the numbers that go out there. But like, if you ask Brian Snitker, what does WAR stand for? he might pause for a second before he answers it. These other guys, they can roll that off their tongue. I just find it very interesting that in 2021, you can have a competitive team managed by a guy who's maybe 4 or 5 years out of the league. And then you could have a team managed by a guy like Brian Snicker, who literally ties 30 years ago baseball into today's game. It's just it's a magical conversation to have, depending on what you like, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's only 3 National League managers that have a longer tenure than him right now. And you look at those guys. Craig Counsell at the Brewers, he's somebody who has, we've seen the way that he's utilized his bullpen. Then obviously Mattingly and Dave Roberts, and we've seen Roberts, kind of lean into that a little bit more with the Dodgers front office in terms of analytics. And on the flip side of the A's, you've got Bob Melvin, you got Terry Francona, and Kevin Cash. Those are the only guys over there with longer tenure than Snicker has at the Braves. And obviously Kevin Cash is a guy who's been at the forefront of using analytics to win games. But I don't think you're necessarily thinking of even though the A's, and it's not like that's what you think of when you think of Bob Melvin, or especially Terry Francona. So it is weird to think that you can coexist. Those kind of approaches can coexist in 21, but I think it's all about it's how they digest that information, right? It's about the front office giving it to them and allowing them to take nuggets of it and then pass it along to their coaches and then their players. So I don't think there are extreme cases, but I think by and large, these front offices are smart enough to let the baseball guy do his baseball thing and and help him along the way and give resources as opposed to maybe putting their thumb down on things, because we saw with Gabe Kapler at the Phillies that doesn't always work out.
No, that's true. Cory McCartney in Atlanta, Georgia, 12:51 on this Thursday afternoon. Anything else across baseball right now that has kind of caught your attention here as it stands in early March?
Full bore in Texas, I guess, for opening day at these stadiums. I mean, that's I don't know. It's such a weird situation to think like there's going to be 20-25% of the capacity in Atlanta, 30% in Cleveland. And then you're going to go full bore in Texas. So I realize it's all localized, but it's just so wild.
And nobody in Washington as of now.
Yeah, as of now.
Yeah. So I mean, it's state by state as it moves along. By prediction though, by the let's say, I don't know, by the end of summer, do you anticipate more ballparks at least allowing 100% capacity?
I think you're going to see a push too as more people get vaccinated, of course. And I think if you're the Braves, I mean, that July All-Star game is looming, and it becomes a very different animal if you can't get those things packed out. You can't get places packed out by then. And I really worry. I had a conversation with my wife about this the other day. I worry about what this current setup is going to do to the accessibility of baseball for people. How expensive is it going to be to go to a baseball game in 2021? I mean, how easy is it going to be to get tickets? I don't think it's going to be easy at all. And, I think gone are the days for now anyway, of being able to walk up and get a ticket day of. I mean, this is going to be, I think people are going to get priced out of the market until things open up.
They better be careful with that, because baseball has been trying to draw new fans, Cory, for, I don't know, what, 10 years, 20 years? How are you going to do that?
Exactly. And I think you're just setting yourself up where it's like, you hear a lot of commercials during Braves games to guarantee you get access to the All-Star game, become an A-list member and a season ticket holder. How close are we going to get where the only way you're going to get those tickets, until seating's opened up, is to be a season ticket holder.
Right.
I'm going to be interested to see how many general admission tickets are actually going to be made available outside of what's sold to season ticket holders.
Can we ask you about the Kansas situation? I wanted to get your take on this. Not to get too far off the reservation here, but Les Miles let go. We know the story. Yesterday, Jeff Long is relieved of his duties. Basically, I think they might have called both of these situations, parting of ways or mutual separation, but they were basically fired, Cory. And we know what the background of the situation is. Wanted to get your initial thoughts on that. I'll probably have a couple follow-up questions, but just your initial thoughts on how this has unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a sad situation, and you hate seeing these instances where power is weighed down on people, and I think we're certainly we're all of an age where we're kind of in between the Les Miles era and then the the newer coaches that are coming up that have been more Gen Z guys. And I think, it's difficult to sometimes be in the middle of that. And we're so used to certain things being a certain way. I mean, remember the SI articles, God, what was it? The coach that got fired for partying with after a game.
Yeah.
Can you remember?
Oh gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you think like that's not that long ago. Right. And now it's like, we've got Mickey Callaway, and guys losing their gigs when we hear about these text messages and stuff. And I think it's like we're still caught in between these eras, and some of these guys are still, very much entwined to being able to pull back on their power and use those for things that obviously shouldn't be. And it's a tough situation. And obviously, you hate seeing legacies ruined and accomplishments at schools ruined and guys who, are tied to programs, tainted and all this stuff. But it's this is where we're headed, and it's whether you want to call it cancel culture or whatever. I mean, it doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
Larry Eustace, Iowa State.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the first name. I knew the last name was something. Yeah.
Something crazy. Yeah.
What do you think the future of Les Miles is?
I mean, I would feel like he's almost untouchable in terms of TV for a while, right? I mean, we've seen him in that role before. Maybe he ends up taking a few years off, and we see him wind up at a small school. Think about like guys like, not the same thing, but like Frank Solich, like kind of reestablishing himself at a mid-major at Ohio University. I feel like that's the only thing that happens for him, right? I mean, we've still not seen Art Briles really get back in it.
No.
And obviously that was an extreme situation too. But as we become more of a culture, so much more sensitive to this kind of stuff, can you allow someone back like that into your fold? Can you let them get back into the game? I think he's going to be an interesting case, because this is a guy who's been uber successful. This is a guy who's the media loved him. And now what happens when, this is tough to come back from?
Yeah, he hasn't been able to eat any grass because Kansas has a turf field. Jeff Long obviously has been relieved of his duties. Does he have a future as an athletics director, in your opinion, in college athletics?
I think are you putting the safety of the student first? I mean, isn't as much as you think about an AD's job is to generate money and to establish winning programs, certainly a subset of that is to keep students safe. Yeah. And he didn't do that. I mean, you think about, what happened at Michigan State with their scandals up there. I mean, I would be surprised if I think Miles, because he's been a successful coach, maybe ends up getting that opportunity. But yeah, I think, Jeff Long is going to have a pun unintended, but he's a long road to getting himself back to anything of substance in sports.
There was a report yesterday that Terry Mohajir, the new athletics director at Central Florida, and I can't remember if it was Pat Forty, I can't remember who reported this, that said that his dream job is the Kansas job, because I think he's been there in a couple of different roles in the past, but now he's at Central Florida. He just hired his buddy Gus Malzahn down there. He's establishing his future in Orlando. Well, I don't understand. I can't. Maybe it was his dream job. I can't imagine it would be now. You want to go to Lawrence, Kansas instead of Orlando, Florida? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, maybe UCF's a quicker springboard than we thought these days.
Yeah.
To get you a job you want to go to.
To be in the doormat of the Big 12? No thanks.
Still play hoops though, but it doesn't generate money, but not the same way.
Cory, on that note, we're going to let you run, my friend. I'm sure you're going to have a nice weekend because you don't watch golf. You're not a golfer, right?
No, not at all. No.
Okay. So you'll be watching.
We start flag football on Sunday. I'm coaching my son's flag football team. So.
Okay. So flag football, spring training, and what, wrestling this weekend?
Yeah, there you go.
Wrestling and CrossFit?
Yep, that's right. Make it happen.
Well, we'll let you know next Thursday who won the Players' Championship. How about that?
All right. Sounds good.
I'm watching it right now, by the way.
Cory, thank you so much as always. Wonderful stuff. Cannot wait for the start of baseball season. Really looking forward to that. Have a wonderful weekend, my friend.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
There you go. Cory McCartney joining us live from Atlanta, Georgia. All right, it's time for a timeout. When we return, South Carolina baseball and hoops to get to with David Cloninger from the Post and Courier. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control. We'll be right back. What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Cloninger, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf team. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Cloninger, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
Taking on the trend of the week in the Low Country. Sorry about that. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. It is beautiful outside. That's what it's been trending like all week. That's what I was trying to say. Is I didn't have my mic on. Darren and Jamie here until 2 p.m. this afternoon. Thanks to Cory McCartney in that last segment. We do have Scott Glaze coming up at 1:30 today. We'll talk to him about the Players Championship. Let me give you a quick update there. Colin Morikawa, Dustin Johnson, and Bryson DeChambeau are teeing off right now, and that is basically the feature group of the afternoon. So they're getting going, and we should have an update on their probably their first, I'd say, 2 or 3 holes before we're off the air this afternoon. Rory McIlroy's round is done at 7 over par, so it wasn't good for him today. Last time we updated this, he was at 6 over par, and a major change at the top of the leaderboard. This is how it finished for Sergio Garcia. He teed off on the back 9, finished, of course, on the front 9. 7, 8, and 9 went 3, 2, 3. Birdie, eagle for Sergio Garcia. A 65 in the first round. He is 7 under par, and Matthew Fitzpatrick lost a stroke at the end of his round. So Sergio Garcia has a 3-shot lead on Matthew Fitzpatrick and Canada's Cory Connors right now down at the Players' Championship. So more on that with Scott Glaze coming up here in just a little bit. But first, we will head to the phone lines, and that's where we find our friend David Cloninger on Twitter at DCPNC. He, of course, covers the Gamecocks for the Post and Courier. What's up, man?
Hang on. Yeah, one sec. I gotta get David. See, this is why we're doing all this stuff here. Now, David, now we can hear you. David said he's not too much going on, making sure we're doing all right.
Yeah, doing fine. It's a busy week for you.
Well, that's kind of the way I like it, Jamie. But it don't stop around here. And obviously, after about I'd say about 11 o'clock tonight, it's got the potential to get a whole lot busier. So we'll see what happens. But I'm here ready to go.
We're going to get to hoops in just a little bit. I do want to talk to you about the future of Frank Martin. Obviously, we'll preview this game. By the way, the last time South Carolina won a game in the SEC tournament, that was 2018 against Ole Miss, 85-84. They've got the 6-seeded Rebels in Nashville in just a few hours. But let's start with the baseball program. Last night, a come-from-behind win against the Citadel DC, and they're now 11-0. This is the first time they've been at least 11-0. I believe it since 2014. You might have that stat handy. And they head to Texas this weekend to take on the Longhorns in what is a top 20 matchup in college baseball, 2 of the major powers in the sport. But the first time they played, obviously, since 2002. But they had to get through last night's first. There were some fireworks from the Citadel side late. Maybe that prompted the Gamecocks' string of runs. Who knows? But nonetheless, they're undefeated still.
Yeah, Jimmy, I mean, you can't do too much better than playing 11 games and winning them all. They've had a really good run to start the season. They have shown that they have some quality depth to their pitching staff. The offense, of course, started out gangbusters, and since it's kind of calmed down a little bit. But that's all part of just figuring out a great lineup and then where the bad guys and just seeing who your best nine are from day to day. So they're playing well. Right now, and like I said, you can't do better than 11-0. But they're gonna find out how good they are real quick this weekend, and then the next 2 weekends. That'll kind of give everybody the real base of how good this team can be, and then they'll go on through that throughout another really tough SEC schedule. But they're should be getting to Austin pretty soon, and they'll get to practice out there at the name of the stadium escapes me right now, but it's a big location, and a lot's been made about the last time they played was in 2002. I mean, not many of these guys were around for that or even remember it, but I certainly do, and it would be nice to see a series win this weekend.
Oh, no question. Yeah, this has been interesting to watch. I was texting with somebody last night, DC, and he mentioned the same thing that you just did, and the fact that the last few games, the bats have – well, they woke up late last night. There's no question about that. They really got going in about the 7th inning, and they're on afterwards. But prior to 4 straight games against SoCon teams, they only scored, I think, 10 total runs over the weekend against Mercer. And then last night, for the large part, outside of a couple of miscues early on in the game against in which the Citadel made, they weren't manufacturing much. But I mentioned to this individual who I was texting with last night, I said, that to me is the sign of a good team. You're not going to put up 10 runs a game in a 56-game season in college baseball. It's not going to happen. So you've got to be able to win in other ways. And I know that Mark would like to probably clean up a couple of things defensively, but overall, they've pitched well when they've needed to. They've come through with the bats when they've needed to. I mean, we don't know if it's a complete team yet. It's such a small sample size, only 11 games. But so far, winning the ways that they've been winning, I think that's a really good sign for the future of the program.
Well, sure it is, Jamie. And, you do like it when it's a different guy doing the damage every night. I mean, obviously, Andrew Eister, was big against Clemson. He had a big hit last night. Braylon Wimmer is really starting to come around and hit. I mean, I think we all knew that Wes Clark wasn't going to keep hitting 850 throughout the season. You see him kind of coming back down to earth and saying, like, okay, now, they're kind of figuring out how to pitch to you. How are you going to adjust? There's a few things to figure out. You mentioned the defense. I think we all kind of knew this year that it was probably not going to be an elite defensive team, probably not even a great defensive team. You just want to try to make it as good as it possibly can. So there are some, other things that they can try to figure out. It's kind of a crowded outfield. You do look at a guy like George Khalil, a shortstop who's pretty good with the glove, who's been around. Not doing too well with the bat right now, but I don't know if you go ahead and make a move just because you have to have somebody to put in that spot defensively, and right now you're doing enough to get by. So, these are all things that you just got to keep figuring out on a game-to-game basis. But right now they're a loose bunch. They're confident. They're playing well, and that's the best thing for a baseball team. I think I said on the program last week, they're not going to go 56-0. They're going to lose one every now and again. But, as long as you can, once that first loss happens, you don't start panicking and saying, okay, what we got to do here. You just say, it happened. You just got to come back and try to win the next one. And we'll see when that first loss happens, whenever that may be, how they respond.
When you look at this starting staff, DC, and you look around the rest of the SEC. All right, let's put Vanderbilt on the side. We know about Vanderbilt. We know about Rocker. We know about Leiter. We know that the Gamecocks are going to see both of those gentlemen next weekend. Even their third starter, I think his ERA is below 1 as well. I mean, it's remarkable what's going on in Nashville. But when you look at this staff outside, I know that Skylar's mentioned to us. He's mentioned to others. Yeah, they'd like to work on a couple of issues based on balls, some walks. They'd like to get those numbers down. But hey, when you walk guys, you got to be able to strike out guys, and they've certainly been able to do that. So when you see this staff knowing what's coming in the SEC, how does it compare to years past? And I'm not just talking about in Mark Kingston's tenure. I'm talking about even prior to that, say post-World Series for South Carolina, the Chad Holbrook tenure. Where does this staff stand in past staffs, and where do you think they stand amongst those elite staffs in the SEC?
Well, you just got to see how they do against the best competition before you can truly judge it, Jamie. We'll say that this staff seems to have a lot more power arms than I think we're used to seeing from a South Carolina staff. Generally, in years past, you have maybe one guy who would throw 90 consistently, and then you would probably almost always see that guy at the back end of games as your closer instead of in the front end. USC, and this is really remarkable considering how much they've won, they managed to do it a lot of years without guys who could throw a plus fastball. They could get it up there about 88, maybe tickle 90 on occasion, but mostly they just knew how to pitch. They knew how to throw, with their control, and they knew how to throw a lot of breaking balls. Well, these guys know how to do that, plus every one of them's got a good fastball. So I would say that, compared to all the pitching staffs I've seen at USC, this one's got a lot more first strike fastball potential, and they've been using that. A lot of people say, like, oh, well, if you get all those strikeouts per game, you use up your pitch count. Well, yeah, there's something to be said for that. But it's also a case of, like, these guys are all averaging 6 innings a game, and that's what you want to have. You want to have a guy who gets out there, eats innings, and can make sure you set up the rest of the weekend to your liking. Everybody's going to have a bad game. Now and again, you're just going to be throwing it up there, and no matter what you do, it's throwing gasoline on the fire. But USC is going to have the bullpen to go ahead and take care of that. And right now, with your number one gun, Thomas Farr, he's the guy that's shown he can go out there, get through any kind of damage, any kind of struggles, and keep getting his 6, maybe 7 innings, and then let the bullpen take over. So, that's what you want to see from a staff, and these guys are all out there doing it. They just got to go out and keep doing it.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, DC. This is baseball. It can change in a hurry. The best bullpens that we've seen at South Carolina were pretty much always the teams that made runs to Omaha. The 2002 team had a great bullpen. Obviously, they couldn't get it done in Omaha, but it was a special bullpen. As a matter of fact, most all those teams early on in that decade, 2001, 2, 3, 4, they had elite closers. They had some guys who could kind of go in and set things up. We know what happened at the back end of the bullpen when they made their run to the championships with Matt Price, with John Taylor, with Jose Mata, Tyler Webb, those guys. There seems to be similarities here. Do you see similarities? You've got Brett Carey. Look what Andrew Peters is doing. You got the Mahoney kid who comes in and throws fire when he needs to, and he has been special. Do you see similarities? Again, not trying to put the cart before the horse, but when you look back on some of those better teams or the best teams that South Carolina's ever had?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. They always had 3 or 4 of those set-up guys, and then you always had that lights-out closer, and that goes back to Lee Gronkevich, back in the day. And you went on to Blake Taylor and Chad Blackwell and all those guys who were leading the nation in saves, when they came through. And then, of course, you had Matt Price during those title teams. So you have a guy like that, with the great closers in history with Brett Carey, a guy who you can depend on and will come out there. And, Brett, he might make it interesting every now and again by putting the guy on base, but he always gets back out of it. I'm thinking he kind of enjoys the challenge of putting somebody on base and just saying, yeah, that's just so I can strike out this next guy. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But, you do look at those setup guys, and they've all been great so far this season. Will Sanders, wet behind the ears freshman, has come in and pitched like a senior. Andrew Peters pitched so terrific last night. I think it was 2 2/3, 2 1/3. Gave up a hit and a run. He's done really well. You mentioned Jack Mahoney, who's done terrific. So if you have those kind of options, and you're not going to have to extend one guy, it can only help you. Now, USC, they got into that kind of I guess I can call it a trap for a few years by always continuing to go with the same guy. It was always John Taylor coming out there, to eat those middle innings, but it kept working. So now, as long as you have more options and you've got 3 guys you can depend on, that's what you want as a coach. And, of course, everybody else wants to pitch, but it's like, well, guys, we're going to go with who got us here. As Ray Tanner says, you dance with who brung you. And those guys have been getting it done, so you're going to keep going to them.
David Cloninger with the Post and Courier. Texas and South Carolina set to go 7:30 first pitch tomorrow night and on Saturday as well. All 3 games. Derek Scott won't have the call. I don't believe. I need to check on that with him because we'll have to see. They play basketball tonight, but we know those games will be televised on the Longhorn Network. I'll check. Tommy Moody will definitely be on the broadcast. We'll check and see who's going to join him with that. All right, let's get to hoops and let's just get right to the question here because this is what everybody really wants to know. If it ends tonight, which most expect it to, this 2021 basketball season for Carolina, what does the future at this point in time look like for Frank Martin?
Well, I can't give you a definite answer, Jamie, and that's because an answer has not been definitely decided. There has been no decision made on the future of Frank Martin. You asked me my opinion. That's a different story, but right now my personal opinion is that I don't believe he'll be back at South Carolina next year. I can't tell you how that decision will be made or what it will be termed. It's just my opinion, but there's been no decisions made on Frank Martin's future right now. Those will come after he and Ray Tanner meet following the end of the season. If that end of the season is tonight, maybe we find out something tomorrow. But it stands to be a very interesting weekend around the basketball facility.
So you anticipate the decision to be rather quickly. How about this? If the decision to move on is made, that would be a rather quick or rather a faster decision made than if this thing drags out maybe 3 or 4 days. Is that a fair statement? I mean, what is the timeline, I guess, is the real question I'm asking here.
I think any decision, stay or go, will be made very quickly after the end of the season. Ray's not a guy to try to drag things out. I mean, the only thing that could potentially alter that timeline would be if they decide, hey, it's been a rough year, and work out some particulars and Frank returns, and then maybe he decides on his own to look somewhere else for another gig. That's the only thing that could really, end up altering the deal. But what the decision is from a USC and Frank standpoint, that's going to be made very quickly after the end of the season.
I mean, what is similar about is there anything similar about this situation to football? I mean, if you go back and rewind the clock, DC, we go back to August of last year, or in any point in time before they actually kicked off the season, I think the general consensus, not just with South Carolina, but everywhere, was essentially everybody has a mulligan this year. And we all kind of thought that would carry over into basketball, into baseball, but it hasn't been that way at all, not just at South Carolina, but across the country. I mean, COVID is an excuse to an extent, but they're not using it as an entire excuse for a failure of a season in any sport, it doesn't seem.
Well, that's the thing. I think we all came into September like, ain't nobody getting fired this year, and no matter what. But we've obviously seen how circumstances change. In football, it was different just because in football there is no postseason tournament where you can kind of save yourself. You knew from the middle of the season that the Gamecocks weren't going anywhere on the football field, so they went ahead and made the decision to do what they did after that Ole Miss game. Now they were never going to make a decision at the beginning of the year because no matter how small the chance is, Jamie, the chance is still there that South Carolina could pull off a miracle this weekend. And if not, it'd be kind of weird that we're going to be talking about another coach's future again after a loss to Ole Miss. But, that's the way it is. We'll see how it goes tonight. This year, COVID has clearly had an effect on South Carolina basketball. There is no one who would debate that. It has clearly had an effect. But as I've said on the program before, as I've said in the paper the past 2-3 weeks, I've spoken with enough people around the situation to say that, yes, COVID will be taken into account when discussing this season, but it will not be a blanket excuse. So that's where it is. Frank was asked, before they went to Nashville about, his job status. He answered very passionately about it. I thought that question probably should have been saved for tonight, but he went ahead and said his piece, about what's going to happen. So we'll see how it goes. There are a few different avenues that this could go. But either way, it's important to understand this. USC as an entity and administration is holding all the cards in this situation. So we'll see what happens. Me personally, I don't think that there's any definite right answer, no matter which way you go. Because no matter which way you go, Jamie, it's still South Carolina basketball. And it's high time people started realizing, they said, I just don't understand why this team can't go to the NCAA tournament more consistently. Well, I don't have a definite answer for you other than that they never have. So why do you think it's going to automatically happen if you make a change?
If Frank Martin is not back, what type of program would he be leaving behind?
Well, it's definitely better than when he got here. There's no doubt about that. But it's a program that has really kind of been the same for the past 50 years. A program that has facilities, that has decent fan support, that has a great arena to play in, but for whatever reason, just cannot seem to get over the hump. A lot of people don't realize how South Carolina's program is viewed from a national perspective, and that's from coaches. And they look at South Carolina and say, like, well, it seems like they've got everything they need to win. So why don't they win? Well, to me, the answer is because you can't recruit to South Carolina. Why can't you recruit? Because you don't play the game the way the college basketball is set up to be won. Now, Jamie, I'm not saying anything strange by saying that college basketball recruiting is a sewer. It's an open sewer. Everybody knows it. The FBI had to step in because the NCAA wasn't going to do anything about it. And we have seen that even when programs get caught, they're not going to get punished, not the way we're looking at it right now. Well, South Carolina has stayed out of that, and that's commendable. But it's also going to be a case of like, well, why can't you recruit? Because you won't get your feet dirty. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm simply telling you what it is. You can't recruit here because you don't play the game. And if you can't recruit, you can't win. It's that simple. I mean, a lot of people be like, no, man, Frank McGuire won. Yeah, the game's changed just a tiny bit in the last 50 years. And that recruiting doesn't work anymore. You have to do what all the other guys are doing. South Carolina won't do it. That's why they struggle.
Well, and if you make a coaching change, DC, that's not going to change. That is not going to change. I mean, they could go hire they could go hire Will Wade or Bobby or Rick Pitino or whomever, who I think we all know these guys have played the game. Ray Tanner is still in charge at South Carolina. Bob Caslin is still in charge at South Carolina. You've known Ray Tanner for over 20 years. I've known Coach Tanner for over 15 years. That's not changing under their leadership. They won't hire, if they have to make a change, they won't hire anybody that will jeopardize the integrity of that program or that athletics department.
No, they won't. And, again, that's commendable, and that's the way you want to do it. And there are coaches out there who have proven that they could be at small schools and not get the quote-unquote blue-chip recruits, but instead get guys they're comfortable with and build them into players, develop them as players. Frank Martin's done a lot of that with the guys that he's had over the past 9 years, and he's added the occasional blue-chipper to the fold, like a P.J. Dozier, like a Sindarius Thornwell. So it can be done. But, I don't know if South Carolina is ever going to be to the case in recruiting to where they can reasonably expect to go to the NCAA tournament every 4 or 5 years. So in this particular case, and, you're going to be reading about this question a lot if things go the way I think they will. It's just this. You chase away, or forget I said that. I don't want to say chase away, but do you move on from a coach who has done everything better than any coach who came before him in the past 45 years because he can't get to the NCAA tournament consistently? On the bargain or the gamble that you can go find a coach who can make the NCAA tournament consistently at a program that never makes the NCAA tournament consistently. Everywhere I talk to about Frank Martin and point out the good that he has done, you know what people say? 1-9. 1-9. That's pathetic. One tournament appearance in 9 years. Anybody can do better than that. Yeah, okay, there's something to be said for that. South Carolina basketball has been eligible for the NCAA tournament for the past 81 years. They have made it 9 times.
Yep.
9 into 81. That ratio is what? 1 in 9.
Yep. Yeah. Wow.
You tell me who's wrong.
It's a great point. I mean, I don't know. It's when you look at the change in football, DC, as much as, and I was one of them. I didn't want to see a midseason change, but they made one. But that change was necessary. The more that we learn about the Gamecock football program, I think the more we realize there was a change that needed to be made, and they made it. Baseball is totally on a different level. It's a different conversation at South Carolina. This is the one that people just don't have the answers for, and it's you throw out numbers like that, and it brings the conversation. It makes it real. It adds a realistic touch to it, and it almost scares you. Like if you are a diehard South Carolina fan, it almost scares you to the point where you almost feel like you've given up, right? I mean, well, there's nothing else we could do. Who are we going to hire? Who are we going to hire that doesn't cheat, that can get this thing done the right way? And it, people have a blank stare on their face because nobody has a response to any of these questions.
Yeah, exactly, Jamie. And again, I don't think there's a definite right answer for whatever happens after this weekend because if you bring Frank back, and I know he wants to come back, he doesn't want to have to go chase around, and nobody wants to use the term fire. Nobody wants to have to do that after what he's done for this program. But he does come back. To me, it's like this. All right, well, one thing, financially speaking, you're lopping another year off of that buyout, which is over $3 million. So, if you bring him back and he's got a year left on his contract with no extension, you say, well, we're not going to come right out and say it, but you know what needs to happen next year if you want to stay around for year 11. And everybody will know that. You're going to lose some players. A.J. Lawson's gone. Woods is gone. Nathan Nelson is gone. Keyshawn Bryant probably going to be a wait and see, but at this point, I would say he's probably 55 to 45 gone. We'll see how that goes. That can still change. But you've got a core of players. You've got a decent group of guys that you know what they're about. They know what you're about. You know how you need to play, and you bring in full recruits. So is that a great chance to make the NCAA tournament next year? No. It's not great. I would say 25 to 30% chance. Okay, well, that's at least somewhat of a chance. Bring Frank back, let him see if he can coach. We'll see what happens. You move on. Well, probably most of those kids are going to leave too. Those 4 recruits probably going to leave as well. You go get a new coach. He's got to scramble to get what he has, and you're pretty much setting yourself up for a guaranteed 2 years of losing, if not 3. Now, will there be some better fan support because everybody loves a new coach? Sure there will. Absolutely there will. People be enthusiastic, and you'll get a little bit of time for he's got to get his guys in here, so be prepared, But when does that stop? And when does it become not good enough to say, oh, well, it's been a year, been 2 years, we ought to be better than this? And you pretty much remove any chance you have of making the postseason next year. So which is better? I don't honestly have an answer. I don't think either one's right because no matter what you do, Jamie, you're still going to be right back here at day, once the circle quits spinning. You're at South Carolina basketball. And the program has not been an NCAA tournament consistent team. It had one 4-year stretch. It had one 2-year stretch. But otherwise, you're pretty much stuck going into every year thinking maybe they could do something this year. Just maybe, if things break right. Now, I realize the 1-9 thing is accurate, and there's nothing I can ever say to change those numbers. I mean, I could point out that, well, nobody went to the tournament last year, but I'll give it to you by saying South Carolina wasn't going to the NCAAs last year. There was no way. I mean, unless they won the SEC tournament, which was damn near impossible, considering they would have had to win 4 games in 4 days without Mike Coatsar. And I'll give that one to you. That's cool. But, man, 1-9. You really think they were going the first 2 years, if not 3? Because I was here, and I can tell you it wasn't happening. In year 4, man, I will always bring that up. 24-win Power 5 teams don't get left out of the tournament. They don't. And South Carolina did. First time in 14 years that it happened. That could only happen here. So, you look at all that and say, I know nobody wants to hear it. Oh, well, we got everything we need to win. I realize that, but you always have had it, and it still hasn't worked. So at some point, you have to realize maybe it's just not meant to be.
If they had made the tournament that year before the Final Four run, will we be having this conversation?
I don't think so. I mean, there would still be some questions about, there hasn't been a lot of progress shown, and that is a legitimate concern. I'm not giving Frank an excuse because there should have been more progress shown than what has been since that Final Four run. But then you would kind of remove any kind of lingering doubt, say, he's gone to repeat tournaments. And when you say, they were both bunched in there together, the perfect argument to that, Frank McGuire was here 16 years. 4 tournaments. That's one every 4 years, correct?
Right.
Well, those 4 were bunched in the middle. So on either side of those 4 wasn't a whole lot of great stuff. So you'd have that argument to overcome it. But the main thing that Frank is fighting is that this year should have been better than it was despite COVID, and that the progress since the Final Four has not been good. You know, that year, and he's told this to me numerous times, and I agree, it wasn't just a team catching lightning in a bottle. That was the result of 4 years of building. They should have gone the year before. They didn't, but they got there in year 5 and went all the way to the final weekend. Well, you kind of expected, or at least hoped, that would happen again. You knew it wasn't going to happen after the year after they lost all their players, but you say, you get some recruits in here, you start building, you use that Final Four to your advantage, and then in year 2 or 3, you're right back there. Hadn't happened. And this year has just been so discouraging because of, it's not just COVID that's affected these guys. COVID hasn't forced them into being one of the worst shooting teams in the conference. The defense, okay, I'll say that COVID probably had a huge effect on that. But, you know, these guys should have been playing better than they are, and that's why we're in this situation.
Well, there's no argument with any of that. A lot of these games just haven't been close, and and for fans, it's eerily similar to what was going on in football season, where you aren't losing, you were getting, excuse my French, your ass beat, and people are done with it. So we'll see what happens. They're going to tip it off late tonight, probably around 9:30. We know you'll be covering that. We know you'll be covering the softball team, the baseball team, the hopefully number 1 seeded women's basketball team, the future of the men's basketball team, spring practice, swimming and diving, the equestrian team, and everything else in between. So I don't know. I know you've got a youngin' at home. I don't know where and when you're sleeping, but good luck with that.
Yeah, man, I didn't sleep much before the baby, Russ. That's okay. And, you know, I know a lot of people are like, well, you know, it's obvious you're a Frank supporter. I do. I think Frank Martin is the best coach for South Carolina, and South Carolina is the best place for him. That said, I understand the frustration of the past 4 years, and I'm not just bringing up the program's history because of that. I'm bringing up the program's history because it's accurate. So we'll see what happens. Either way, I'm going to be, you know, on the news. Of course, in the interest of my, you know, my sanity, of course I prefer not to have to do another coaching search. I mean, I didn't have to do one for 9 years until this year, and now I'm going to have to do 2 major ones. Well, I had to do one. That one went through okay. But it's going to be an interesting few days. And like I said, this has not been a good team. They can't shoot. They can't play defense. But who knows? Just maybe there's that tiny chance. They win tonight, and they get some confidence, and then some things happen. Now, maybe it would require even something like Duke just had to do. You know, they had to pull out because of COVID, so Florida State got an automatic pass. Hey, maybe that'll happen. I don't know. But it's going to be an interesting few days, and assuming they lose tonight, be tuned tomorrow, because as soon as it happens, you'll know.
Yep. David Cloninger with the Post and Courier. We'll keep ourselves updated. We'll follow you on Twitter as we always do. We'll read the Post and Courier, postandcourier.com for much more on this and everything else going on in Gamecock athletics. DC covers it as well as anybody out there. Hey, man, I would say enjoy the game tonight, hopefully. And we know that you'll enjoy the baseball series this weekend and everything else that's going on with the South Carolina Athletics Department. We'll check in again next week.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother. David Cloninger on Twitter at DCPNC. Quick timeout. When we return, Scott Glaze on the Players Championship right here on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Dub.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. Whatever you got planned this week, cancel it. 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours at whatever price it takes. I repeat, 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours. To the first 72 car buyers interested in saving up to $6,000 on a new Volkswagen for 3 days only. Every new Volkswagen and pre-owned vehicle at our bottom line price. Direct to the public, regardless of profit. Qualified purchases with interest-free financing for 60 months, and all trade-ins will be accepted. Interested parties should arrive early for best selection. You will not find a lower price anywhere in the country. 72-hour Volkswagen clearance, savings up to $6,000, 3 days only at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Dub.
$16.66 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down, plus tax. Tag includes $4.99.50 administration fee, subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Guys, spring is finally in the air. You know what that means? Basketball in its home stretch. March Madness promotion at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. From now until the end of the tournament, $5 Sweetwater pints. That's right. Every Sweetwater, just $5 at Dog and Duck, Park West, Bell Hall, and their Clements Ferry location. Plus, baseball spring training, college baseball, spring football, it's all available at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what?
Hey, buddy, I'm not paying you to hear your thoughts on life. I'm paying you to sing. Well, I have a microphone, and you don't. So you will listen to every damn word I have to say! You are the worst wedding singer in the world, buddy. Sir, one more outburst, I will strangle you with my microphone wire. You understand me?
You are listening to my friends JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
All right, final segment on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Quick check from the hardwood. It is now final. Oklahoma State has defeated West Virginia. Oklahoma State, of course, is coached by former Gamecock Mike Boynton. So if tonight is the last game that Frank Martin coaches at South Carolina, I'm sure we'll keep some eyes on him. He is currently has Oklahoma State at 19-7 on the season. Now with that victory over the Mountaineers. Also, Kentucky down by 2 at the under 8 in the SEC tournament, in the SEC basketball tournament in the second round. Kentucky has played quite well in the second half after being down 14 in the first half, but still a 62-60 lead for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And then how about this one? Syracuse and Virginia tied at 59 with a little bit over 4 minutes to go in that one in the ACC quarterfinal. Maryland, by the way, all over Michigan State, 68-57. That one is all but over. Darren, if Michigan State loses, they'll fall to 15-12. Are they in?
They are absolutely in. By beating Michigan in the end of the regular season, that punched their ticket. They're absolutely in. I told you at the beginning of the show, felt like a sucker line. Told you.
Yeah, you were right about that. All right, let's get Scott Glaze in here. Scott, of course, is the golf pro out at Stono Ferry. He is our expert, and he's on the line to tell you what's happening in Ponte Vedra Beach at the TPC Sawgrass. That, of course, is home to the Players' Championship, where Sergio Garcia has surged to the lead at 7 under, 3 shots ahead of Matthew Fitzpatrick. What's up, our friend Scott Glaze?
What's going on, guys? It's Players Championship week. This is special. I've got my, if you remember my Masters mug, I do have my Players Championship mug for my coffee this week. Shout out to my buddy Chris Safaro, who picked that up. Actually, the last time that we had a Players Championship, 2019, we didn't have this event in 2020. So Rory McIlroy is still your defending champion, I guess we could say.
Not
Rory,
for long.
Yeah, not for long. Rory put up a what did he?
7 over.
7 over, 79 for Rory there. Really, after a disappointing Sunday last week, he was in the mix at Bay Hill, and I don't know what it is with Rory. He his press conferences this week, he was talking about several things going on in his swing, different feelings that he has, so on and so forth. But it's shocking to me. Sergio is tried to run away and hide today with a 65. I don't think we'll see that. I don't think we'll see him caught today. Usually this golf course plays a lot more difficult in the afternoon. He's got a 3-shot lead over one of Darren's guys there, Matt Fitzpatrick. And a name to keep an eye on is Victor Hovland. He's high on my list. He has played really, really well. His last few starts, he's finished tied for second, tied for sixth, tied for fifth, tied for second. Last week didn't play as well. He didn't make the cut at Bay Hill. We finished tied with 49th, but he's trending in the right direction. Biggest thing for me is that we've got a lot of big names that are playing poorly. Let's see. We have Rory, 79. Tony Finau shot 78. Ricky Fowler continuing to play poorly, 77. He's a former Players Champion. I mean, he's had success here. Xander Schauffele, 76. A guy that I thought was going to have success this week being a great ball striker. Russell Henley, 75. I mean, not out of it there at 75, but still going to have to do work tomorrow to make the cut. So that's the biggest theme that I see right now is that a lot of big names are not playing well this morning. We do have some guys this afternoon. We got DJ, we got DeChambeau. We'll see how they fare this afternoon. But like I said, more often than not, scores are higher in the afternoon. So that's the great thing about the Players' Championship, though, is the parity. You can never predict who's going to win this thing. The golf course isn't really suited for anybody, so that makes it suited for everybody. So we've had some obscure winners here in the past, and we've had some thoroughbreds win here. So it's a great event, and it definitely is a major championship feel. Here's a fun stat. The winner this week will take home $2.7 million by winning the tournament. Johnny Miller, he's not on NBC anymore, but legendary golfer, U.S. Open champion, shot 63 at Oakmont to win the U.S. Open on Sunday. If you didn't know that, he would tell you on a broadcast. But anyway, Johnny Miller made $2.7 million in his whole career.
Good
Hall of Fame career. So life-changing week if you can finish atop the podium. $2.7 million is wild.
Let me throw a couple other quick nuggets in here. Clemson's Kyle Stanley at 11 over today. He shot in 83, which is terrible. Lucas Glover also, he is 3 over, another former Tiger. You mentioned Bryson and DJ. They're both 1 under. They both birdied the par 5 second. But let's talk about Bryson, and let's talk about the adjustment to the out of bounds rule on 18, basically because of his comments. This is not totally unusual, Scott. We've seen other tournaments in the past bring an out of bounds area or create an out of bounds area that would traditionally be in play in tournaments. But Bryson DeChambeau basically started talking about, well, I'm just going to hit this sucker right over the lake, and then I'm going to have a better shot at the green. And they said, yeah, you're not going to do that. Here's what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen. So, you know, my question is, I mean, he even mentioned in those comments, well, if I can't do that, I'll probably just slug a 4-iron down the fairway there and then play it 7 or 8 in. Why not just do that anyways? I mean, what would he have been gaining by hitting the ball over the lake?
I don't know. He loves to be the mad scientist, so to speak. I think he really likes the that he's going to be the smartest guy in the room. It's kind of the same personality trait of Phil Mickelson. I've always said Phil loves himself some Phil. Same type thing with DeChambeau. BDC loves some BDC, but I don't know why he would say it. I think he looks at every possible angle on every hole. We saw that last week at Bay Hill when he was able to win, taking some crazy lines over houses, over trees, whatnot, and his brute strength, along with the fact that he was able to gouge out of some pretty thick rough at Bay Hill. He was able to gouge the ball out with much shorter clubs. I think that his recovery from where he's able to hit the ball, I think is really impressive. And when he's on, I think that leads to his success. However, I think he must have just seen some sort of angle potentially while scouting the golf course and thinking about the Players' Championship that he could take it X amount of yards left to then carry the pond to then have a shorter club into the green. And as a result, the PGA Tour made it an indefinite OB left. So basically what that does is that while you're playing the 18th hole where that OB is then marked. It's indefinite on the property there, but just solely for the 18th hole. It's not going to come into play if you were playing a bordering hole. So I don't know. I really don't know why he brings that stuff up, because that's not the way to play the 18th hole. The 18th hole is the way to play it. Also, not how Rory played it today, making an 8. But slug the 4-iron down there and hit 7-iron into the green. I mean, 18 is a tough hole. And you need, for a little foreshadowing for our video here, you need confidence and you need a go-to shot there, because you can rinse one in a heartbeat. So the 4-iron, 7-iron, that's the way to go. But saying that you're going to hit 4-iron, 7-iron is not going to give you the notoriety or the headlines. And I think there's just a twinge of that with DeChambeau.
We know that the lake's on the left, Scott, and we know that the woods are on the right, or the trees, I should say, are on the right of 18. If you're in the trees, what type of shot do you generally have coming out of there?
Oh, that's an extremely difficult shot, because the lake hugs the entire hole. The hole bends dogleg left around the lake. So off the tee, you have to bite off as much as you can chew. A lot of guys will bail out to the right. That then is really tough. You might have to chip out, or you're going to take on an extremely risky shot trying to punch it through the trees, or maybe shape it around the trees, which would bring the water back into play if you were trying to, for the right-handed player, trying to start it out left over the water and cut it back in. So that's what makes the hole so difficult, because it challenges you on both sides. There's nowhere to bail out.
Can Bryson overpower this course like he was able to overpower Bay Hill? I mean, you touched on there's some gnarly stuff he's able to get out of because he's hitting wedge, whereas other guys he's playing with, you miss a little left and right, you're coming in from 180, 200, and you can't get out of there. Can he overpower this course the same way?
They did a great job on the broadcast last week. I think it was on the 15th hole where DeChambeau had a wedge from the deep rough, and Westwood hit 6 or 7 iron out of the deep rough, and Westwood was able to scramble for his par there, but it looked like DeChambeau, he had a great look at birdie because he was able to hit wedge out of the rough. I don't know if he can overpower this golf course. There are a lot of nuances to this golf course. It is Pete Dye's masterpiece, and lots of dog legs, lots of strategic bunkering. Similar to Augusta National, a lot of pine trees and pine straw, and we saw DeChambeau struggle at Augusta when he was hitting the ball in the trees. There was not as much of that at Bay Hill, just a lot of thick rough. We do have more tree-lined holes at Sawgrass, which could affect Bryson. Certainly, it's hard to play from the trees. It's one thing to gouge it out of the rough if you've got nothing impeding the shot, but if you're in the trees, that makes it difficult. I am amazed by his accuracy with the length that he has. But if you're hitting the ball substantially further than everybody else, you have to take these crazy lines, and sometimes those lines are going to lead you out of play and not necessarily in the short grass. Dustin Johnson, they asked him in his press conference earlier this week if he thought he could hit the ball as far as Bryson if he really wanted to, and DJ, he, as deadpan as he is, he said no. He's longer than me, and that's fine. But I'm trying to hit fairways, trying to hit the ball straight.
Right.
And so I think that's telling, and I think that's why DJ is still the number one player in the world.
All right. So right now, 17 and 18 at this point in time are playing as the toughest two holes on the course. 17 is playing a little bit tougher today than 18. We'll see how it goes. I would anticipate those numbers to probably stay that way throughout the afternoon. But will they for the rest of the rounds 2, 3, and 4? Do 17 and 18 generally always play as the two toughest or two of the toughest holes on the course?
Typically 17 is going to play harder. It's going to play very hard on Sunday because they put that flag back right. And when you're on the tee, it looks like the flag is just hanging off the edge of the green, and that you can put one in the water so easily. Today, I've only seen a little bit of it, but I think the flag's back left, which is another difficult.
Right by the
is that where it is?
Yeah, right by the I guess the strip that'll take you there by foot.
Right. So that's another difficult flag because you have to fly the ball. It's a 2-tier green. You have to fly it to that top tier. When the greens are firm, it can take a big hop. We can see balls go in over the water. The 17th is the famous island green at TPC Sawgrass. The hole plays easier when we see the flag in the front in the collection area on the lower tier. That's where Tiger made his better than most putt, which this is the 20-year anniversary of, which is hard to believe. So we'll see that. We'll see that a lot. But they typically put the flag up front a couple days, or if they don't put it up front for 2, they'll put it up front on one day in a good collection area, and then kind of right in the middle of the green another day. And those are usually easier locations. 18 will play extremely difficult all week, just because of, as I talked to earlier, there's the water on the left. That forces you to bail out right, but if you bail out right, that's no picnic either. So 18 will play extremely difficult all week.
One of the things that makes this tournament great is if it comes down to Sunday, you can lose this thing in a hurry on 17 or 18, so certainly looking forward to that.
Yeah, if you get in the house, if you're somebody on Sunday who's chasing and you can get in the clubhouse, this is one of those tournaments that you want to post a number. I love those tournaments to where you can kind of, everybody's got 7 to 9 holes left, and you can kind of say, all right, first person to post 13 under wins, per se. And I really think we're going to be in that type of situation where, you might not have a guy chasing from behind to get the 13 under, or whatever the number may be, and post. It could be someone who's in the final group, but a lot of times these events and players championships, it's about posting that number and having it there and safe, and then watching everybody fall by the wayside then on the very difficult closing stretch.
All right, Scott, what are we going to see here in this week's video?
So this is a pressure-packed event. $15 million on the line, biggest purse in golf, bigger than the U.S. Open, which was the biggest purse until this year with the Players' Championship. So a lot of pressure for these guys. And there's pressure on the PGA Tour. There's pressure at the Players' Championship. But there's also pressure if you're playing for a couple bucks with your buddies. When we're under pressure in golf, we don't have teammates that can bail us out. It's all on us. The pressure's all on our shoulders. So it's very important to know how to handle pressure, know how your body handles pressure on the golf course, and how you're going to be able to deal with it. And I think it is key for regular players, better players, to develop a go-to shot, something that you know you can hit, that you can pull out under pressure and rely on. And you can hit those shots in those big pressure moments. That's what a lot of these guys will be hitting this weekend, especially on 17, 18, when they need them the most. They can pull out those go-to shots. And we can roll it and go from there.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? We have a huge week on the PGA Tour this week with the Players' Championship. This is golf's quote-unquote 5th major. The pressure ramps up in these massive events, even more so than it would during a normal PGA Tour week. It's hard to execute shots that seem simple when we're under immense pressure, whether we're on the PGA Tour or whether we're out here playing with our buddies. So I think when you're under pressure, it is vital to have a go-to shot, a shot that you know you can pull off. Maybe it's a fade. Maybe it's a really high shot. Maybe it's a low knockdown. For me, I love hitting a trap draw. I call it a trap draw just because I can put it back in my stance a little bit, flight the ball down, and hit a draw very easily, and that's comfortable for me. So find your go-to shot. It might be a 10-yard slice. It could be a 10-yard hook. If you're a high handicapper, I would suggest finding your favorite club. If we can't get to the green in 2, it's going to be a lot more beneficial to hit a club as solid as you can and get it as close to the green as you can, rather than trying to necessarily take the longest club in your bag. So try that out. Find your go-to shot, whatever it may be. And then when you're under pressure the next time you play, you'll be comfortable knowing that you have a shot that you can execute. If you need help with it, as always, call me. Come see me. Until then, keep it in the short grass.
Very well done. StoneOakFerryGolf.com is how you can call Scott Glaze And of course, book your tee times. I'm sure the course has been packed this week because it's beautiful. You can be a part of that. StoneO'FerryGolf.com for more. So the point of that video, to summarize, Mr. Professional Golfer Scott Glaze, is what?
So to summarize, there's an old cliche, to dance with the girl that brought you. So if you're hitting a big hook one day, hitting a big slice, know what you can do and do consistently. So when you are in a pressure-packed moment, late in the round, whatever it may be, that you can pull the shot off. And what I said in the end of the video there, for higher handicappers, beginners, people that don't necessarily have the distance to necessarily get to every green in two, find out what club you hit the best. I have a lot of lessons where we try to figure that out for higher handicappers, because if you know that, hey, my 6-iron is the best club in my bag, I hit that so good every single time, but my 3-wood, I top it more often than not. Well, then why in the world would you pull 3-wood on your second shot when you know that top is not going to get you to the green? Hit the 6-iron, hit it flush, get it closer to the green, make the next shot easier instead of just continuing to top that 3-wood. So to use that as an example. So just dance with the girl that brought you, know what you have, and know what you can perform under pressure.
Or in other words, keep it simple, stupid. Make the
there you go.
Make the KISS method relevant while you're on the course. StoneO'FerryGolf.com, 843-763-1817. I would suggest folks just put that in your phone. Just put it in there as tee time and then dial it, and you can book a tee time, or head to StoneO'FerryGolf.com to book one. You can also get some sign up for lessons with Scott Glaze by heading to the website. You can see the entire golf course. It's an awesome website, and it is a beautiful golf course, the most beautiful golf course to play in the Low Country on the banks of the Stono River in Hollywood, South Carolina. Scott, on that note, we're going to let you run, my man. Thanks so much. Wonderful stuff. I know you're going to have a great weekend watching the players. Who's your pick to win it?
I'm actually going to go with Jordan Spieth. He has a horrible record at the Players, but I think he's just trending in that direction, and we got a lot of big names that are tanking. Could be Spieth's week. So I think that would be really exciting for golf. And I feel like this week has a really exciting feel already. I think Spieth's going to put an exclamation point on top of it.
Wow. He's 1 under par through 4.
Yeah. There you go. There's a lot at 1 under. Mickelson's at 1 under as well. There's a lot of big names at 1 under right now. So we'll hold you to it. We'll find out next week if he wins. If he wins, we'll buy you a cheesesteak at DB's.
I love it. That sounds delicious. I'm in on that. Come on, Spieth. Let's go.
Come on, Jordy. Come on, Jordy. Yeah, old Jordy. Jordy got there and teed up. All right, Scott. Thanks, brother. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Y'all do the same.
Scott Glaze on Twitter at Scott Glaze, and we'll leave you with a buzzer beater. Reese Beekman, a freshman at Virginia, as time expired, drained a 3, and the Wahoos escape Syracuse. The top seed is still alive in the ACC tournament. Syracuse, they'll wait to see if they're picked on Sunday for March Madness.
Different story in the SEC. Kentucky's buzzer beater, no good, and Mississippi State beats them by a point.
And Kentucky's season is now over.
Yes.
We'll see if South Carolina's is tonight. Thanks to Cory McCartney, David Cloninger, and Scott Glaze for joining us this afternoon. To all of you for watching and listening, and thanks to Darren Goldwater for all of his hard work. Got a big day tomorrow with Rafael Esparza. We're going to try to check in with John Whittle on some baseball. Looking forward to that. For Darren, I'm Jamie. Have a wonderful afternoon. This is the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll see you tomorrow.